It's time to explore the world according to Glenn. I'm Kevin Jacobsen. Glenn Close is my favorite actress, and this show is all about exploring the career of one of the finest actors of her generation. Each episode, I'll be joined by a guest as we dive into one of Glenn's movies, TV shows, or stage productions, going chronologically through her career, discussing her performance, and assessing the project itself. And today, we are talking two of Glenn's performances from 1997, her Emmy-nominated turn in the HBO TV movie In the Gloaming, as well as her memorable cameo In and Out.
Eight-time nominee Glenn Close, motherfuckers.
My guest today, I am always so happy to podcast with. She is a film critic behind the website Female Gaze, the Film Club, and host of its podcast, where she discusses films directed by women. You've also heard her on And the Runner-Up Is, chatting the Best Actress lineups of 1956 and 1999, which are both super fun discussions. Welcome to the show, Morgan Roberts.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here to talk all things Glenn.
Yes, and even though these films are not directed by women, there's still plenty to talk about.
Yeah. I will say I don't hate films directed by men, but
Wow.
love talking about ladies and the work that they do. So
Yeah. Yes. Well, I'm so excited to have you on for this kind of mini double feature of sorts. But before we talk first, Glenn, in the Gloaming, tell me your relationship with Miss Close overall, if you remember when you first saw her, what you like about her, and your favorite performance.
Yes. Well, I was a weird kid, and so my parents kind of let me watch really odd films growing up. And there was one summer where I was spending it in kind of this rural part of the country where my mom grew up. And the only film that this tiny area had on like their public TV was every day at like 3 p.m. Mars Attacks played. And so for an entire summer, I just watched Mars Attacks on loop because that's what we had to do. And so obviously, as the first lady, she was a big influence. Hearing her scream the Nancy Reagan chandelier is iconic. And then,
Formative.
of course, yes. And then, of course, seeing her in 101 Dalmatians was another formative experience because here she is in this children's film, kind of doing what Michael Caine did in The Muppet Christmas Carol, which is treating it like art as it should be. And, I think that makes really big impressions on you as a child when someone takes the art that's geared for you very seriously. So that's kind of where I've always been with Glenn, is just I know that she takes really big risks, and whether or not they always work is one thing, but I think being audacious in your art is far more admirable than like, I don't know, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a bajillion dollars out of it. So obviously those are both two very formative films and two films that I love her performances in because they're big. And I will do another performance that I also love that I think is big and outrageous, which is in The Stepford Wives. I love her performance in that. I saw that for the first time this year. And it's her and Nicole Kidman making all the choices.
Yeah.
And I just respect that so much.
Yeah. So you love Glenn in that sort of campy mode, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, she's also such a great dramatic actress too. But I think it's kind of the same thing as like to talk about her co-star and The Stepford Wives, Nicole Kidman. Yeah, I love Nicole Kidman in The Hours, but like, I'm going to talk about Nicole Kidman and like Practical Magic and Baby Girl before I talk about her kind of like more dramatic roles.
Hmm. Yeah, I get that. And I love what you said about her taking, these kinds of roles seriously, even in children's entertainment, quote unquote.
Yeah,
Because I think also children appreciate not being talked down to or,
totally.
condescended or, that sort of thing. So I
Yes.
think more
And
actors could take from that these days.
totally, totally. And as the little girl who always loved the villains, her
Hmm.
Cruella de Vil is like very important in like me going like, yes, this is why the villains are so cool because they get to do all of the things.
Right. They get to have fun. Imagine
Hmm.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love that. And we're continuing within this period of Glenn's career where she is really thriving and getting so many fun opportunities, including, even though this isn't fun, it's certainly a juicy role for her
Totally.
in the Gloaming. So to introduce this TV movie, she's returning to television here just 2 years after her Emmy-winning role in Serving in Silence. And she signed on to this primarily because of the director, Christopher Reeve. Yes, Superman himself, Christopher Reeve, who she was friends with for 15 years by that point.
Hmm.
So they eventually lived very close to each other in Pound Ridge, New York. So Christopher had his horse riding accident in 1995. He then came to the Oscars in 96, less than a year after his injury, to a huge standing ovation. And as he says in the Superman documentary that came out last year, that appearance on the Oscars gave him the courage to go back to work. And this was his first project. And he had been long interested in directing. He was recommended by the former president of HBO to direct this adaptation of the short story In the Gloaming, which was written by Alice Elliott Dark and published in the New Yorker in 1993. So, because his ventilator was so loud, he wasn't really able to physically be in close proximity to his actors as they were in the scenes. So, he had a special workstation where he could monitor the action through video, and obviously he could only communicate what he wanted through verbal instruction. But he assembled a great cast, including Glenn, David Strathairn, Whoopi Goldberg, Bridget Fonda, and Robert Sean Leonard. Glenn playing the lead of the film alongside Robert Sean Leonard. She says of her role in this film, I play a very uptight wasp, basically, which I know something about, which certainly tracks with her Connecticut background.
Totally.
Yes, In the Gloaming tells the story of a young man named Danny, played by Robert Sean Leonard, who moves back from San Francisco to his childhood country home after living for quite some time with AIDS. So it's revealed gradually that he doesn't have much time left to live and wishes to reconnect with his parents after some time apart. His most meaningful connection is with his mother, Janet, played by Glenn, with whom he has a powerful bond, but he hasn't always fully connected with her about his sexuality and his love life, despite her being relatively accepting. He struggles to reconnect with his father, Martin, played by David Strathairn, and his sister, Anne, played by Bridget Fonda, who lives outside the house now, and she kind of feels jealous of how much their mother preferred Danny even during their childhood. Eventually, we also have Whoopi Goldberg, who shows up as Danny's live-in nurse. So,
Hmm.
yes, the film is largely comprising of conversations between Danny and his mother as they come to terms with their relationship, hash things out, bond over their love of movies, and yeah, just come to terms with his impending death. So, let's talk In the Gloaming, Morgan. This is one of many social drama movies that HBO
Yeah.
made in the 90s, and also a part of this big wave of films kind of about the AIDS epidemic in some fashion. It's also only an hour long, so I'd say it goes by pretty fast. So, what are your initial thoughts on In the Gloaming and Glenn's performance?
Yeah. I mean, so as we kind of have talked about off the pod, this is my first time watching this.
Mm-hmm.
So I went in completely blind. And I will say, very early into the film, I was like, wow, I do miss the time when, whether it was a TV film or like independent to mid-budget film, where we just had people together in a house and like we talked about either social issues or family dynamics or a fun combination of the two. And so I was very nostalgic for that time in cinema where we really were so focused on like the human experience.
Hmm.
And so I was really excited about that. It is only 60 minutes. So, like, you are there and you're like, okay, a lot has to happen. I know that his time is limited, but also so is ours. So, I
Yeah.
thought that there were a lot of really great and touching moments. Also forgot that Glenn Close can sing. So, like, that
Hmm.
was a lovely little touch in the film, too. Yeah, so I was really struck by both the structure of the film and the intimacy of it and then the performances that could come out, especially Glenn, who is really the one who is the glue for all of these different characters in the film. She's the one who interacts with everyone the most. I really liked her performance. I think because it's such a short runtime,
Mm,
there were a lot of moments where I was just like, oh, I wonder if we had even just 20 extra minutes,
right.
what we could have done to like sit in some of the moments that we had with her. Because there's one scene where we do kind of just get to sit with her as she really just has like this wave of realization, of emotions, of letting things go and also letting things in a bit too. And I thought that that was such a powerful moment in the film. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if we had a little bit more time, if we could have seen some of that a little bit more, either before a scene or after a scene, or especially be able to like hang on to a realization. Because as you were saying, in the film, she and her son are very close, but she's starting to like recognize that he had a whole life outside of what he experienced and what he expressed to her.
Right.
And that, not only are you losing your child, which is awful, but then you're also having to like put together the pieces of who this person was. And your ability to do that is also so difficult because there's other dynamics at play with you and your husband and you and your daughter. And so I think the runtime was a little bit of a detriment to be able to like flesh out some of those moments. But I think for the time that she had, she obviously was like, I know who this woman is and I know what her role is. I also would have loved a little bit more about there were some expressions of her starting to understand that like her very privileged suburban life was maybe not what she had wanted. And I loved the hints of it, but I think it would have been so much more powerful to hear a little bit more of like what those desires were and how like she was learning from her own child to like express her wants in ways that she was never allowed to or expected to have. So,
Yeah.
but again, for 60 minutes, she still was like, I know how to like show up. And that's, I
Hmm.
think, very important in such a constrained time.
Yeah. I agree with a lot of your thoughts there. I really like this a lot. I had also never seen it, despite it only being an hour long. And I mean, it makes sense knowing it's based on a short story. It
Hmm.
feels like they just kind of adapted the story and left it at that. I do wish we could have expanded further from there because there's really so much potential here. I also feel like it would work really well as a play because of
Hmm.
how dialogue heavy it is, just how it's these mostly these conversations with Danny and Janet. So, I mean, that said, I feel like even though it doesn't quite reach its potential to tell a fully fleshed out story, there's also this level of restraint and I guess like a sensitivity here that I really admire about this. And I think a lot of that's because of Christopher Reeve's direction to, him telling this story of a person struggling with this illness for which there is no cure and not making it like a cliche triumphant story or making Danny into like this suffering saint type of
Hmm.
figure. Danny is a complicated person. He's not always nice to his mother or anyone in his family. He can be kind of prickly and a little judgmental at times. And Janet isn't like this saintly, suffering in silence type of mother either. It is also ultimately more her story than his. told much more from the perspective of like an outsider trying to understand this, rather than centering on him. But I do think at the same time, this is an interesting story to tell of how
Hmm.
she is like, it's helping to awaken her to the priorities in her life, I guess, and kind of reckon with how she treated him in the past and whatnot. So I think there's a lot of good stuff here. I think it's much more sensitively portrayed than a lot of the
Hmm.
gay stories in the 90s about AIDS. Really,
Very much so.
yeah.
Yeah. And I like what you said about the restraint, because I think that
Hmm.
also is such a big part of Glenn's performance, because I think so often when we were talking about the AIDS epidemic in the 90s, and I mean, I would like to pretend that we have grown a bit from there, but likely have not. But,
Yeah.
so much of it would be so melodramatic and really big choices. And as I was saying, how much I love Glenn making big choices, I also think that there is a lot of power in restraint and kind of that introspective performance. And I think Glenn was able to really capture that interiority in a way
Right.
that I don't think that people would have leaned into. And I think some of it also has to do with Christopher Reeve's own sensibilities as an actor and a filmmaker, that he was just so interested in like human interiority that she had the space to, and like, permission. Because I think, again, sometimes your director wants you to go big and then bigger and then fly off the handles a bit so that they can get, their good dramatic clip for the trailer or for, an Oscar moment or
Right.
whatever it might be.
Hmm.
And, I think for a film towards the tail end of the height of the AIDS epidemic, it would have been so easy for like every other scene to have been her shouting and angry at something, or that the conflict would have been so loud. And I think that she was able to really hold it inwards in a way and like slowly start to reveal where the struggle was for her without kind of placing that then on her son of like, yes, the outward struggle is that you're dying, but then there's also so much interior tumult there
Hmm.
of, was I a good enough parent? Were the sacrifices that I made worth it? And then now that I don't have this child that I'm close to, like, who will I be after that? And again, I think she could have so easily have gone for big and bold, and she didn't. And it was so grounded in just all the right ways.
Yeah. I really think a lot of the success of the film is just those conversations between her and Robert Sean Leonard. I think also they both have that kind of New England East Coast
Hmm.
sensibility to them. I think for a lot of people, like Robert Sean Leonard is associated with Dead Poets Society, and I think he's bringing a similar energy to this role. And same for her, obviously, her Connecticut upbringing. Like they both feel like they're cut from the same New England
Yeah.
cloth, upper middle class, but also repressed. I thought a lot about ordinary people watching this too. The idea of
Hmm.
like these characters who are experiencing a tragedy that has happened or will happen. Like in ordinary people, they're kind of dealing with the death of their eldest son, and that family is really struggling to kind of pick up the pieces and communicate with each other. And here with this family, it's like the tragedy is impending. It's not
Hmm.
necessarily in the past, but it sort of is in the process of like knowing that this family will be forever changed after this, and how hard it is sometimes to say what you feel and what you're going through, especially to your family. And so that's something I definitely related to personally. And I just appreciate that she really understands the tone here. And this performance from her, I do think, is very deeply felt. She is not going theatrical, like you said. She is not camping it up at any point. This is actually one of her more down to earth characters she's played in quite some time, honestly. And So, yeah, I think that's for me, like, even if I can't personally relate to this particular struggle between these characters, I did find a lot of truth in the
Hmm.
dynamic between this family.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about it too is we always struggle with like just as an American society with like confronting death
Yeah.
and those things. And when I was in grad school, I worked in hospice. And so I
Mm,
always find it really interesting the ways in which hospice is portrayed in cinema. And I think that this film kind of is able to really balance that, like, there is a comfort of like going home and being surrounded by your family in your final moments,
right.
especially knowing that throughout a lot of the AIDS epidemic, that was not always the case, that people were not surrounded by maybe biological family or able to have the means to be with their chosen family during their final moments. But the fact that it is this very privileged white family that's like, we're going to wield our white privilege right now to coalesce in a way is like really powerful. And I think obviously, again, it's an hour long, so you can only show the death and dying process in such a constrained way. But I think even Whoopi Goldberg's character, who like she verbalizes a lot of things that like hospice nurses would say to a family who's sitting there going like, well, what else can we do? And she's like, literally nothing. Like he is here to die. Has anyone said that to you?
Right.
And I think that that's really just the film in general was able to handle that in such a nuanced way that I don't think that we see very often. Because I think the ordinary people comparison is great too, because it is these two waspy families dealing with death. But you do have the aftermath of death, and then you do have impending death. And there's a grief process that happens even before someone passes. And so I think Glenn, in her performance, is kind of able to ebb and flow through what we see as like grief and those five stages and like really show kind of the non-linear aspect of it. And that, it's not just I'm sad because someone's dying, but it's like I'm sad because I'm thinking of all the future things
Mm,
that I'm not going to be able to experience with this person as I'm sitting there with them having this conversation outside, learning about, his past relationships and hearing what he wants in his memorial service and those types of things.
yeah. It's really heavy, I think, and you can feel the layers of that past, present,
Hmm.
future kind of constantly on
Yeah.
her mind. And even to your point about the Whoopi Goldberg scene where she is informing her that Danny has come home to die, essentially, that there's really nothing she can do. It really strikes Glenn's character in that moment because nobody has actually been as direct with her about
Yeah.
that. And just hearing those words, like, I think she knew that consciously, like, or subconsciously on some level that this is what's happening. But just hearing
Hmm.
it confirmed back to her by, kind of an expert, it really, takes her aback and makes her really
Yeah.
have to face it directly
Hmm.
in a way she maybe hadn't before.
Yeah. And like also hearing that, her son is the one who signed the a DNR, do not resuscitate, which is usually done when people are like, again, in palliative or hospice care.
Yep.
And hearing that it's not only the realization that, like, yes, her son is dying, but there's also a little bit of her son has been planning for
Yes.
this. And I think I can only imagine, because again, I think Glenn does such a great job of kind of holding her cards close to her chest in a way that like entices you as an audience member. But like knowing that your own child is like planning to die, that's also a whole nother layer of like, how do you even begin to comprehend that? And then how do you have conversations with that person moving forward? And I think you do see that in kind of like her holding space for him to tell her, what he wants in like a memorial service and like in lesser hands even just talking about a memorial service would be like a source of conflict. So they had to fight about that. So then they can come to some grand realization. And the film doesn't do that. And then
Mhm.
as an actor, Glenn is able to like hold that space in a way for both Robert Sean Leonard and the audience because we're kind of in this journey. And so it's really interesting, again, the layers that they're able to add in such a short runtime.
Yeah. And I think she is also demonstrating to some degree, and the film is demonstrating the ideal way to deal with this
Hmm.
situation without overtly preaching to you about being like, this is how this should be done. You're, like you said, she is allowing him the space to reveal what he wants. I just love all of those conversations they have, whether it's like on a bench together and they're just looking at the twilight, the gloaming, as the film
Hmm.
is calling it, and her just kind of listening quietly to him and how he's telling her like at one point about writing a will, and she just kind of
Hmm.
sits there and takes it in, and he also thanks her for not making a big fuss about it, about how like, oh, there's time for that or whatever, like all these generic things that people would say about that without like wanting to directly talk about it. She
Hmm.
is just like, yes, you should write a will, and that is, yes, we have to do this with some level of urgency, unfortunately. And because they
Hmm.
both know that the end is near, and so yeah, he thanks her and she just quietly says you're welcome, which I just find to be one of the more moving moments in the
Yes.
film.
Yes. And especially because her character has to be the one to like move through grief with her son because her husband and daughter are kind of both in like very denial type stages. I mean,
Right.
and her daughter is also like very resentful. There's, again, I wish that there was a little bit more that the film would have done because I'm like, gosh, I think that there is something about resentment and like I would love to have been able to dive into that, both of like Glenn's character reckoning with that, but also like her daughter maybe having a little bit of grace or learning a little bit of grace as like, I don't know, her own brother's dying. I know that family dynamics are different, but
Yeah.
I I would have a hard time if my sibling was on hospice. So like,
Hmm.
there's just so much that I was like, oh, if we just had 5 minutes, if you could have given me 5 minutes to like unpack just a little bit of that, that would have been really interesting. Because again, like her interactions with Bridget Fonda are sparse, but there's so much there that you're like, oh, I wish. Because there's the
Yeah.
resentment, there's her saying like, oh, you favored him, and Glenn having to be like, I love both of you. And I'm like, Glenn performance is so sincere that I'm like, I absolutely believe that. But I don't have enough to be able to say, like, yeah, for sure, you do love both of your children. I just have to
Yeah.
kind of take your word for it in those moments.
Well, I mean, that's another part where I thought about ordinary people, because that's part of the conflict there, is that Mary Tyler Moore's character was so favoring of Buck,
Hmm.
the eldest son who died, and has like this weird relationship with Conrad, her surviving son, that is like, yes, she loves him, but she sometimes has a funny way of showing it,
Yep.
And so, yeah, there's definitely something there that I think could have been teased out even more from the short story. That's where I felt like the film kind of, there's some flaws there in how it treats the Bridget Fonda character, I would say, in a very not so generous way.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, like, again, it's not like Glenn or Christopher Reeve's faults
Right.
for
Of
that,
course.
but it would have been so great because I do think that there were kind of moments where I'm like, oh, I can see like Glenn is ready to cook right now in these moments. And they're just like out of the kitchen. You got to leave. Like, we're not going there.
Right.
And there were just like, again, I think there was that moment where Bridget Fonda's character is trying to get Glenn Close to like go out with her. And she's like, we'll go to the city. I'm going to take you to lunch, which I don't know why anyone's problem solving is I'm going to take someone who's sad to lunch because that just seems like the best thing to do in this moment.
Hmm.
Um, and they have like this kind of confrontation where Glenn Close is like, I gotta go check on your dying brother. And Bridget Fonda's annoyed by the entire situation. And they had this really great moment. And then it was like, and next scene. And I was like, oh, like I
Hmm.
really would have loved to have seen a little bit more of that because I think that adds, again, continued complexity to Glenn's character, who's like sitting there, kind of grieving one thing, but potentially also reconciling the things that she didn't have. And maybe she didn't have as great of a relationship with her daughter as she thought that she did. And that's something to confront at this moment too. But there
Yeah.
wasn't enough time for that.
I know. Yeah, and I wish there was a little bit more resolved there to even
Hmm.
like as maybe hokey as it would be to show like a scene towards the end with her and Bridget Fonda's character of being like, okay, I'm gonna be like a better mother to you now, or I don't know, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think also that the relationship with her and her husband is an interesting one because you're definitely seeing how she is disappointed in how
Yeah.
he is treating their dying son, and he seems to be kind of like skittish and uncomfortable even confronting the idea of his homosexuality, or yeah, especially the death itself. Like he seems to just kind of be like, we'll have other people handle it. Like the thing with the will is like,
Yeah.
oh, we'll have like whoever deal with that, rather than like, you are his father and you do not even want to talk to him about what he wants in his will, despite you being like
Yes.
a lawyer or whatever. So yeah, there's a lot going on there, and between like fathers and their gay sons, that I think definitely rings true. Like the scene where
Yeah.
they're like trying to bond is very awkward and forced, like him bringing like his old tennis trophy into Danny's room and like trying to force this conversation about it. And he talks about like his old tennis partner, which his dad doesn't seem to know that was probably a little more than just a tennis partner.
Yeah. Hmm.
And it's just being like, hey, we should like go see him sometime down at the club. And he's like, yeah, we were pretty close, but I don't know if that's a great idea. you know
Yes. Yeah, there's so many like hints being dropped, and this man like looking at the ceiling going like,
right,
"Oh, I can't see any of that."
exactly.
Um, yeah, and there are some great moments with this couple who are like having to confront the fact that their son is dying, but that's also kind of like another relationship that it's like, oh, if we had just like a little bit longer to like really just tease a little bit more of that out, I think we could have seen even greater performances there. Because
Yeah.
again, I think with Glenn's character and performance kind of being the glue for the film, the most kind of well fleshed out relationship is her and her son. And it's like, oh, but like this is a whole film about family dynamics. It's not just this central relationship. It's really so centered on her
Hmm.
that yeah, I was just like I would love more. I would love just a little bit of a deeper conversation between those two characters. Would have loved to have just seen those actors kind of play off each other a little bit more too, because I mean, I don't know if you saw A Little Prayer, but David Strathairn is great in that too. And I'm like, yeah, I know that these are great actors, but there were just some constraints with the fact
Yeah.
that you needed to be able to go to a commercial break at some point in time. And that is what happens with TV movies occasionally.
Yeah, like we do get those little glimpses into their relationship, but that's another thing that is not fully fleshed out. Like they kind of, even in the conversations with her and Danny, they kind of talk about how the marriage is a little bit like they don't seem to be communicating well
Hmm.
together. Like Danny is just like very directly confronting her about how they don't seem to like communicate well, which I find interesting. But again, it just doesn't quite go far enough for me to really feel like it's a full exploration of that. It
Yeah.
it does just feel like it's more about her journey, and all the rest are kind of just like supporting players in her
Yeah.
journey, which is fine. That's how some films can be, and I don't think it's a huge detriment here, but yeah, you have these great actors here. Like even in the Bridget Fonda scene, I think she's great in that one big scene where she's confronting. And I don't know, I just, yeah, just wish there was more.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, in wanting more too, it is when you have such great actors together, I think being able to like give them room to breathe a bit in their performances
Yeah.
is also kind of like where something spontaneous or just clicks in like an indescribable way that,
Hmm.
again, if you only have such a short amount of time, you're likely not filming for long stretches because you know that you're going to have to edit that all down. So you do have like that as a constraint. And then again, like you are having to go from point A to point B in it's a sprint, not a marathon here. And so you're really having to move so quickly from some of these kind of more supporting through lines that they have in the film that it's like, well, yeah, it makes sense. I wanted more on some of those things to like really, Glenn is the central performance, which I agree she is. I think it just gives more nuance and layers to who that character is and what that struggle is. And that on the surface, it just seems like the struggle is her son is dying before her eyes. And it's like, oh no, like her life was a mess beforehand because she's in this marriage that she can't connect with. And she has this daughter that she loves, but also doesn't know how to communicate with. And this is just really the thing that pushes her over the edge to like actually start to confront all of these other things that she was able to like drag along for who knows how long.
Right. Exactly. And I think really though the ultimate, juice of the film is in those conversations with
Hmm.
Danny where they're even talking about these more unrelated things, seemingly like movies, bonding over movies, and her feeling like the best kind of movies are the ones that make you laugh and cry at the same time, like
Yeah.
E.T. And talking about how like she admits she loves violent action films sometimes whenever life really gets tough, which is a fun little detail, and bonding over their love of old school romantic comedies. She talks about hating sex scenes, which is,
Hmm.
I'm sure she'd have a lot to say about our current conversation about sex scenes in movies.
I'm
Um,
sure she would.
yes, because she kind of justifies that as being like she thinks of it as private and that directors are just showing off or that they're like that they're not afraid of showing sex or whatever. Like they're all thumbing their
Hmm.
noses at their mothers, as she says.
Yes.
And as she kind of justifies, it's like she thinks that real emotions are way beyond what can be put on film.
Hmm.
And that is kind of what is prompting her to talk more about, his love life and asking him directly, did you love? Were you loved in return? And he says he
Hmm.
was. And she is just happy with that. Like she doesn't
Hmm.
really need to know further details from there. I don't know if it's because it necessarily makes her uncomfortable per se. It's just, she's just kind of letting him sit with his own experiences and his life, and he's free to talk about them, but at the same time she can sort of be happy that he had that experience
Yes.
of love
Hmm.
and being loved in return, which is very sweet, and I think you're seeing her growth there in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it also, to your point, like with 60 Minutes, what seem like throwaway lines really are these ways to like build a little bit more of like, because,
Yeah.
you're not going to just sit there and talk to people about dying all the time. Like,
Right.
you are going to sit there and talk about movies and then move into things of like a little bit more serious of like, have you ever loved and been loved? Like, is that an experience that you got to have? And you don't have to like do it in a way that it's like, I'm asking this because you're dying, because again, that's a little bit too on the nose, and most people don't talk like that. But it does kind of feel like very natural progressions into more serious conversations because, again, that is what people would normally do. You would normally start with, we're just gonna sit outside and talk about this thing. Or, I loved in moments when he would talk about his grandfather, which Glenn Close's character's father,
Hmm.
and like those memories. And I'm like, well, yeah, that is what you would do with your family, whether or not they were experiencing the dying process. If you're at your childhood home, you would absolutely be like, remember when this thing happened? Or, hey, this thing reminds me of grandpa or something like that. And
Right.
I think they're able to very weave those things in very naturally in the conversations that they had. And obviously, so much of that is the performances because again, we grew up in the 90s. We know what an after school special is. It could have easily gone into that territory and we had people who were able to like weave
Right.
very naturally from one topic to the next.
Yeah, those conversations feel organic as I'm watching
Hmm.
them. They very rarely do I ever feel like I'm taken out of it because I feel like I'm being taught a lesson necessarily. So
Hmm.
that's a credit to the screenplay. And
Yeah.
so I think there are just also those moments of ebbing and flowing of not necessarily always wanting to make you cry or feel emotionally overwhelmed as a lot of these stories can try to do sometimes. Like
Hmm.
the moment where she is singing Danny Boy to him late at night, I find extremely moving. Um,
Yes.
Although I did note one of the lyrics, of course, in Danny Boy being from Glen to Glen and down the mountainside made me laugh a little bit because, like, Glen is singing about Glens.
Yep.
It's just fascinating. Also, this is a little bit of a tangent, but like before she did Sunset Boulevard in 1994, she barely ever sang in movies. And now, as I've been going chronologically, it's like almost everything she does. She has at least one scene where she sings. I just find that so kind of fascinating and funny. But yeah, when she gets to those final lines, like that is really where you're feeling
Hmm.
it affect her. Like she's no longer singing just a traditional folk song. She is singing directly to her son who is
Hmm.
dying as she sings, "Oh, Danny boy, I love you so," and can't
Hmm.
even quite get out those words. It chokes her up so much. It's really, really heartbreaking.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, I mean, isn't this what always happens is Hollywood either remembers or they finally realize that someone can sing and they're like, all right, we need you to do a song now.
Yep.
Um, I mean, gosh, Meryl Streep in the mid-aughts, they were like, wait a second, we forgot she can sing. Like, let's put her in all the musicals.
Right. Pretty much.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think one of the things too is music is always like such a powerful storytelling
Yeah.
vehicle. And like when you do have someone who can sing, like you should use that to your advantage, especially when you are trying to convey very, again, there's heartfelt and there's just so many other emotions bubbling underneath that you can have more dialogue on it, but why not just have someone express through song? And we also
Yeah.
know that like when people have like various forms of cognitive decline, like dementia,
Hmm.
music is something that like actually helps them remember. I mean, like I had experiences where I worked with patients that you turned on a Christmas carol that they loved, and someone who was not engaging all of a sudden like came to life in like
Hmm.
really magical ways. And so I think being able to like have a song in a film like this is also so powerful because it
Yeah.
is like, she's singing to her son. It is usually a song that you find sang very frequently at funerals.
Hmm.
Not to reference Schitt's Creek, but Catherine O'Hara did give Glenn Close a run for her money on her version. But
Sure.
like that tends to be a song associated with funerals, kind of the same way as like bagpipes are, even though you can use bagpipes whenever you want.
Hmm.
And I bring that up because that is like the one thing that David Strathairn's character contributes is he has this realization of like, oh, I remember how much he loved the bagpipes at your father's funeral. And I'm
Right.
like, yeah, because there is something stirring about that music or that instrument. And so, yeah. And then, of course, David Strathairn's listening to her sing to him. And I'm like, nothing. You're not. Not a single tear. We're just up there stoically. I'm white people. What are we doing? Like,
Yeah. To be fair, I would say that is probably an accurate
yeah,
reaction from a husband who is unable to communicate with his wife. But,
totally,
but,
totally. Sitting there, Connecticut. What are we doing?
right. Yeah, pretty much. But I think after that, they have like one moment, like I think they're in bed after that,
Hmm.
where I think he says something about how like she hasn't sung in years.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's really wild just how quickly it all just goes downhill as we get to the end, and he
yeah.
starts to cough up blood, and they finally are reaching that point again where it's they're in the gloaming, that time of, they call it longing between day and night,
Hmm.
like the mystery of that, which is a really lovely sentiment. And yeah, there's also this little exchange about how like they are talking about how David Strathairn's character grows tomatoes but doesn't eat them,
Hmm.
and is he tells her that like he grows them for her. That's Danny telling her about what his father is doing, which really takes
Hmm.
her aback and makes her think and kind of consider maybe that relationship she has with him again. And that's the point where he is gasping out his last breath and her looking over and realizing what's happened. It's so devastating. And like, keep in mind, we're like 50 minutes into this movie.
Yeah.
That is so short, but I think you can definitely feel the history, I think, between them, just how special that relationship
Hmm.
was. And just her realizing that she's not going to share another conversation with him. Like it's awful. And she really sells, I think, the devastation there without making it into this big Oscar
Hmm.
clip type of moment.
Totally. Yeah, because there is the, I mean, just the wave of like going from denial to like accepting that it's happening and then
Mm,
like shooting back kind of towards different levels of bereavement is
yeah.
really just like so smart. She does it at in the quickest turns. And it is kind of like a really, it's such a powerful way too to like talk about the ways in which we communicate with each other because she and her son can obviously could speak so freely. And in his final moments, he's like, Dad communicates to you by growing you tomatoes.
Yeah.
Like, and it's
That's his love
the,
language, growing
yeah,
tomatoes.
yeah. I'm assuming that's acts of services or gift giving, but I think
Yeah.
growing tomatoes should just be like its own
Yeah. Secret third thing.
section. Yeah. Um, yeah, but it is so much about like as you were talking about the gloaming there, that it is this gray area. And I
Yep.
think so often people are looking for very straightforward answers. And it's, you know, the film's using its final 10 minutes to really talk about that there is so much that's in the unspoken that that's kind of where there's like a whole other life
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. It's really lovely. And,
Hmm.
again, that's something that could be very hokey and cheesy, but there's a real restraint and a believability in how they choose to say those words and present those ideas. So,
Hmm.
yeah. And in those final moments, she's also calling Paul, who is Danny's lover, for the funeral, saying like, you should stay overnight while you're in town, and that my
Hmm.
husband would like to meet you as well, which is a very lovely gesture of, I think, maybe realizing a little bit that she could have done a little bit more when Danny was still alive. She could have invited him for Thanksgiving, which he
Yep.
also confronts her about earlier in the film. So, yeah, I think that's a really nice small gesture in showing her growth. And yeah, definitely the moment towards the end where they talk about funeral arrangements and the music, saying that he
Hmm.
would probably like bagpipes. That really strikes me personally.
Hmm.
And just him asking her with such aching
Hmm.
sincerity, would you please tell me what my boy was like, essentially?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
that really took me aback, because he's
Yeah.
realizing he should have done way more
Yeah.
when he was still
Hmm.
alive, and them hugging it out is yeah, it really ends on a very small but just like enveloping note for me that really took me aback.
I mean, even just the staging of, when they're taking Danny's body away, you
Mm,
have Glenn Close right there.
right.
David Strathairn is right behind her, and then Bridget Fonda is right behind him. And it's just like, oh yeah, like that is
That's
such a
it.
physical representation of like
Right.
where they were. And give me 10 more minutes because I'd
I
like to
know.
see how much further up on the porch the other two will move.
Right.
But such clever blocking to
Right.
just convey a lot without, again, knowing your time constraint of we got to show this. Let's not be too on the nose with it. So let's use the blocking to like convey that.
Yeah, it's a really brilliant, subtle use of blocking that I think is present throughout the film. And that is where I will say one more time how I relate this to ordinary people, because Robert
Yep.
Redford really had such a great sense of blocking between the characters and showing the relationships through just
I mean,
the way they stood in a scene together. But
yeah, it's almost like actors turned directors really know their stuff. I'm just
hmm,
saying.
yeah, some of them do. Not all of them, but yes.
But yes.
A special few. But yes, it's a really lovely little movie, and I highly recommend people watch. It does not take much of your time.
Mm-mm.
Instead of watching an episode of Stranger Things, you could watch In the Gloaming, and
Yeah.
honestly it's probably shorter, but
Yeah. And
so
then you can go back to the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City
well,
to
there you go.
get your spirits back up.
Exactly. Yeah, but I think it's quite moving in
Hmm.
its storytelling, and it really makes me wonder about the kind of director Christopher Reeve could have been if he had even more time, because this is a really
Hmm.
special little movie.
Hmm. Or again, kind of just the want to expand just a little bit more on a
Yes.
short story because we know that it works. I mean, Smooth Talk, short story, Brokeback
No,
Mountain,
Brokeback
probably the
Mountain,
most
exactly.
famous
Yeah.
short stories.
Hmm.
Yeah, like we know that you can build out worlds that way. And I think for the brevity of it, I think it still manages to be very effective
Yeah.
in both the storytelling and also, the performances.
Yeah. So, okay. I think if unless you have any other stray observations, um,
No, just
actually,
great
one other
time.
thing I wanted to mention is the music, which is by
Yeah.
Dave Grusin. That kind of took me out a little bit at times.
Yeah.
I will admit, it felt like, okay, we're definitely in the 90s. Just the way that the piano score really hammered home a few things.
I was just like, if we could just also turn it down a little bit, maybe my
Yeah.
age is showing. But I was like, the music's too loud in here.
Yeah. I can't hear what they're saying. Yes. Yeah. I felt a lot of the On Golden Pond themes resonating
Mm-hmm.
throughout because he also did the score for that. So that's the only part of it that kind of is like, okay, well, it feels a little dated in that way. But otherwise, I think
Yes.
a lot of these conversations in the film,
Hmm.
I think it's still relevant all these years later. So anyway, that's all
Yeah.
I had.
Almost 30 years later, too.
Yep. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we should move on to our next film, which is In and Out. So we won't spend too much time with this because she is in it for a very short amount of time. But because it's such a fun cameo in her filmography, I did have to devote at least one segment to her performance here, especially because of the nature of this cameo.
Yeah.
So to just quickly introduce this film, In and Out, it's a satirical comedy directed by Frank Oz, who would later direct Glenn and the Stepford Wives, by the way.
Hmm.
Written by Paul Rudnick, who was actually inspired by a quote from Tom Hanks during his Oscar speech for Philadelphia, where he called attention to his high school drama teacher as well as a classmate and referred to both of them as gay. And Paul Rudnick got the idea of this being like maybe an interesting source of conflict for like a comedy in which a similar scenario happens, but the teacher is not actually out. But is
Yep.
outed on national television, which is a fun concept. But the film stars Kevin Kline as Howard Brackett, who's this respected English teacher living in this idyllic small town of Greenleaf, Indiana. He's engaged to be married to another teacher, Emily, played by the great Joan Cusack, with whom he has yet to have sex, saving it for their wedding night. But the whole town prepares for Oscar night because one of Howard's former students, Cameron Drake, played by Matt Dillon, is nominated for Best Actor for playing a gay soldier in a movie called To Serve and Protect. And Cameron wins the Oscar, and during his acceptance speech, he dedicates the award to Howard and also outs him as gay, which takes everyone in town aback and causes Howard a lot of grief as he tries to kind of like squash the story, and he hasn't quite come to terms with his homosexuality quite yet, and it becomes a media circus in the ensuing days. And so that's the film. And then Glenn is playing herself. She's the one who announces Cameron Drake as the winner at the Oscars. She's on screen for maybe 2 minutes, but she is clearly having quite a bit of fun with that time. So yeah, any thoughts just briefly on In and Out and Glenn's fun little cameo here?
Yeah, well, I guess that means in that universe, Glenn won an Oscar in the 90s because
Correct.
She would have to, Best Actress usually presents Best Actor the following year. So I'm like,
that's canon. Yes.
That's a better timeline.
I think so.
than some of the ones that we had in the 90s. I will say, I was sitting there watching it going like, what? Who has no one ever been to the Oscars? Like, why is this the longest? Like, we have to present. Here's our next Best Actor nominee, and here are 8 clips from his movies. So that really took me out. But I mean, Glenn Close obviously was like, this is a farce because this is too long, but I'm here and I'm going to just be fabulous in this great dress. And that is exactly what she was. I mean, we also mentioned Whoopi Goldberg randomly shows up, and I was like, how are these women just like showing up on my random Friday?
I know.
Here. Loved it though. No complaints. But yeah, I really loved that she could she was like, this is a comedy because there's no way that I would stand up here for like 3 whole minutes watching clips from this one movie and then mention way more famous actors just briefly to them present the award.
Right.
She knew what was happening, and I appreciate that. Yeah. What were your thoughts?
Well, just to talk a little bit about the film itself, I know it's dated, and there is a feeling of it leaning a little hard into like some lazy stereotypes. Like, of course, Howard loves Barbra Streisand, and he's an English teacher who loves romance novels, and he's like a snappy dresser, and a lot of jokes kind of like stem from like the irony of this whole situation. Like, how could anyone be shocked that he's gay? That's kind of the idea. But I find it's just like such a sharp script at the same time.
Yeah.
With so many scenes that I laughed out loud at, especially with Joan Cusack, who
so good,
was rightfully nominated for an Oscar for this performance. I love her scene at the bar after she tries to hit on Tom Selleck in that reporter character who tells her that he too is gay. And she just goes outside and is screaming, "Is everyone gay? Is this the Twilight Zone?" I love that. She's just so, as you were saying, it is a dated film, but Joan Cusack, man, she just shows up and you're just going to have a delightful time. She's going to kind of like Glenn and her more campy films and performances. Joan Cusack is like, I'm going to stay here at this like lower register, and then I'm going to go big. And you're not going to know when I'm going to go big, but I'm going to go big because that's who I am. And I love that. Right. And like at the wedding too, where Howard comes out, like he chooses the wedding to come out as gay, and she has a meltdown and is screaming, "Fuck Barbra Streisand and you."
Yep.
And just socks him. Just incredible.
So good.
Yes.
So good.
But yeah, it's just a really enjoyable movie. It goes down easy. It's probably best not to think too hard about it or overanalyze it. But yeah, just a really fun cast. And I think Glenn's cameo, I have so many thoughts on this. First of all, it's just so funny to me for obvious reasons. Seeing her in the context of being at the Oscars and how for people like me and you, having that insight of like the previous year's acting winner tends to present this year's category. But yeah, in the 90s, it was like a very important tradition that I think a lot of people knew about. And so her presenting Best Actor suggests that she won Best Actress the previous year. And so I like that timeline. And she just brings that great sort of Glenn Close professionalism and enthusiasm to the proceedings as she's just reading this like pre-written text from the teleprompter. Just the way she emphasizes certain lines and is being like, oh, Cameron rocketed to stardom with courage and charisma, tackling the role of a brave gay soldier. The breakthrough film to serve and protect. Just that emphasis on gay is just perfectly in line with the comedy here.
Yeah. She knows comedy. I wish she was in more like audacious comedies. I mean, there's more actors, I think, kind of in her peer group that I'm like, I would love for them to be in like a more raunchy, like make 80 for Brady R-rated, you know, kind of thing. Let them be a little bit more wild. Let Paul Feig put a whole bunch of them together and make them go to Vegas or something, like, you know, something like that. And I think Glenn Close, again, as someone who can do it all, her comedic timing is always so good. So
yeah, absolutely.
This is me manifesting Paul Feig having some sort of vehicle for Glenn Close.
Yes. I think, honestly, Glenn and Meryl sharing the screen together, like, I've talked about it a few times. They don't quite have a rivalry per se, but like they were in such the same conversation for so many roles and really came to prominence at the same time. They have like a weird, almost like a sisterly relationship in how they bond with each other. Like I said, it's not like a Betty and Joan type of thing by any means, but like there's just a tiny bit of competitiveness between them that I would just love to see that on screen together again. But
yes, and again, like raunchy comedy, because I think they would both do it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, she's saying some wild shit on All's Fair right now.
Yeah, great.
Like,
let's get her far away. Let's get her far away from Ryan Murphy and get her into, I don't know, a plane on something to, you know, go off on an air marshal or something.
Exactly. She could do it. Oh, yeah.
She could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, you know what? I want a Spy 2. Let Glenn Close be in Spy 2.
Whoa. Yes. And she could do an accent, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I hope that she would change her accent each time she's on screen, because that would be hilarious. And she would do it.
Yeah. Suddenly she's got like a Russian thing, and then it's like a German. Yes. So much potential.
Someone call me. I have ideas.
Your mind. Yes. But anyway, back to this cameo. Another thing I wanted to note.
Yeah.
She comes out to the Oscar stage to the score of Sunset Boulevard. I feel like this must be emphasized because, you know, I feel like that might even be like an inside joke even for like gays who are watching and being like, oh, is that Sunset Boulevard? Maybe that suggests the idea that they made a movie adaptation of Sunset Boulevard.
And that's how she won
and that's
Best
how she won
Actress.
her Oscar. What could have been, you know?
I know. Again, a much better timeline.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, to your point, I love that they show 3 or 4 like full scenes on the broadcast of this one performance, which is obviously completely unrealistic. But it is also kind of like the way they show it is like this stereotypical Oscar bait movie about a gay soldier being discharged from the military, and it's funny, I would say.
Yes. Yes.
What's also funny though is the other nominees that she reads aloud, which, if I may present, the other nominees that Mr. Cameron Drake is nominated with: Paul Newman for Coot, Clint Eastwood for Codger, Michael Douglas for Primary Urges. And I love that she blows him a little kiss in the audience, as if to be like, hey, Michael, remember we did Fatal Attraction? And Steven Seagal in Snowball in Hell.
Which is probably the most Steven Seagal movie title I've ever heard.
It's true. Yeah. Although Clint Eastwood in Codger makes a lot of sense too.
Yes. Hmm.
And
it was wild.
Yeah.
Wild group.
So funny. Yes. Also unrealistic, the idea of a young, hot man winning Best Actor over all of those legends. The Oscars would never do that, as we know.
No.
They hate young studs in Best Actor. They're like, we have to humble you. You can't win. Wait till you're 60.
Yeah, they're like, you won't go bald, but we have to humble you in another way, and this is how we do it.
Exactly. So, a lot of suspending of disbelief within this scene.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she just fulfills that role to a T, and I just enjoy it so much.
Yes, and she definitely brings the air of someone who had just won an Oscar and is just coming back to present. And I'm like, you know those. You know when that happens because they come on, they've just been drinking, probably, because that's usually what happens. And they're literally just there to present.
Yeah,
and
they don't have to worry about, am I going to win? Yeah, she's already
they're
won.
just she's showing up. It's like Emma Thompson at an award show energy kind of thing. But with the Glenn Close poise that she brings, because Emma Thompson gives no shits, and I appreciate that. But like Glenn Close is like, I'm gonna teeter on that and my very astute professionalism that I bring to the room. So
we're not gonna see Glenn Close kicking off her heels.
No.
To go present.
But she's gonna wink, wink, nudge, nudge. That's exactly what she's gonna do the minute she gets backstage.
Exactly. Yes. Just a few other things surrounding that scene, though, I wanted to talk about. I love the lead up to the big night where it's like all these older ladies gathering around the TV set. And one of them goes, Gretchen, what do you got for best documentary? And Gretchen is June Squibb.
June Squibb.
When I tell you, I screamed. And she's just like, something about Polish mine workers and their struggle to be free. So good.
With only the way June Squibb can deliver that line, too.
Yes. Like, it's so fun how she still has that kind of sense of comedy and line delivery all these years ago and still has that today. Another great exchange that I adored. I hope that nice Sally Field wins. And then one of them goes, but she's not nominated. And she's like, even so. Which, like, I agree. She may not be nominated, but it sure would be nice to have Sally Field win,
Yeah. I think we can say that about a lot of people normally, too. We're just like, oh, it'd be really nice if insert actress here won. And it's like, they're not nominated. And it's like, well, they could still win.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. There's also a point later where June Squibb is like, there's all these older women confessing secrets about their lives. And then June Squibb's like admitting that her husband has 3 testicles. And as she says, and it's disgusting. I just, she has 2 or 3 scenes here, but every single scene I'm like, ugh, such a clutch player.
I love a character actress. And I mean, June Squibb has had such a rise in the past few years that it's like, yeah, but she brings her character actress mentality to everything. That's why you're enjoying this.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just a really fun cast, really from top to bottom. Also love Debbie Reynolds here as Howard's mother.
Wilford Brimley.
Wilford Brimley.
Up.
Yes, I know. So, yeah, it's just a really good time, I would say.
Yeah.
Like we said, it's dated, but Glenn is a really, I think, one of my favorite scenes in the film.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, a movie that wears its heart on its sleeve while also kind of being a little bit of a farce. Love that.
Yeah.
Let's do a little bit of that.
And also love living in this world where something that happens at the Oscars is like a source of insane conflict.
Yeah.
And it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, this is the biggest event. This is the biggest news story that this like small town teacher from Indiana is gay.
Yep. And getting married on like a Tuesday because I was trying to figure out that timeline.
Yeah.
I'm like, the Oscars are
Good
on a
point.
Sunday.
That's a
You're
great
getting married
point.
in 2 days.
Yeah.
Maybe it's cheaper.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. But yes, Joan, great. Just a really fun movie. So there you
Totally.
go. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's just get to the release first of In the Gloaming, which premiered on HBO on April 20th, 1997, just a week or so after Paradise Road, which we talked about last week, was released in theaters. So In the Gloaming, very well reviewed at the time. I couldn't find info about how well it did in the ratings because HBO doesn't really do that.
Yeah.
It also doesn't really matter when it comes to HBO. So suffice to say, it got very good buzz and good attention. And so it also did very well with awards as well. Back when the Cable Ace Awards were still a thing.
Wow.
Yes, it won 4 of the 6 categories it was nominated for, including for Glenn in Guest Actress in a Dramatic Special or Series. And
Interesting.
Will Schaefer won for writing, Dave Grusin won Best Original Score, and the movie won Best Dramatic or Theatrical Special. So,
Good for them.
yeah, huge hit there. And then at the Emmys, it got 5 nominations, including Best Made for TV Movie, Best Directing for Christopher Reeve, Cinematography, Supporting Actress in a Miniseries or Special for Bridget Fonda, and Lead Actress in a Miniseries or Special for Glenn. And this was Glenn's 7th Emmy nomination. Very impressive. And her 5th in this category. So really becoming an Emmy darling. But the film did not win
Yes.
any of those nominations. And actually, just a quick little peek into that lead actress category, though, because I always like to do that. Glenn was nominated with Stockard Channing for An Unexpected Family, Helen Mirren for Prime Suspect 5, Meryl Streep in First Do No Harm, and the winner, Alfre Woodard, for Miss Evers Boys.
Wow.
And you want to talk about an Emmy darling? Glenn ain't got nothing on Alfre Woodard. This was her 3rd Emmy win, and now all these years later, she has 18 nominations.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
yeah,
Also, what a stacked category.
right? Can't go wrong anywhere.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. And actually, same thing happened at the SAG Awards in 1998, where Alfre also beat Glenn in that same category. Also, by the way, Alfre had already beaten Glenn 2 years earlier at the SAG Awards for the piano lesson when Glenn was up for Serving in Silence, which Glenn won the Emmy for. So anyway, great decade for both of them.
That's amazing.
Yes. And the other
Let's
films.
have
Yeah.
Alfre Woodard in our raunchy comedy
Yes.
with her and Glenn and Meryl.
Right. Yeah. She was just in summer camp, I believe. That was with Diane Keaton and Kathy Bates.
Yes.
So, I think she'd be down for that.
Yeah.
But any thoughts on why you think the film did so well with awards and got such a warm reception from critics?
I mean, I think we know that the AIDS epidemic touched a lot of people, especially in creative spaces. And so I think to have a film that is kind of tackling it in such a sensitive way, I think is very helpful. I also think it didn't hurt that this was really Christopher Reeve returning to working.
Yeah.
And, such a well-respected actor to kind of have him come in with this, TV movie was a huge thing to happen to him, to Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I also think when you got a cast like that too, to have people of that stature all come together for this film just felt really natural to be something that people would seek out and then watch too
Yeah.
and connect with.
I think that's exactly right. And yeah, all those elements, combining that with the prestige of HBO, I think it's just a beautiful combination of elements that the fact that it was also a very good movie, sensitively told, was the cherry on top. Because as we know, awards narratives can sometimes supersede actual
Yes.
quality of the film at times. And I think when you get a case where both kind of are coinciding, such as Christopher Reeve coming back and directing and having this incredible cast being on HBO, plus the film being so good, I think just made it kind of undeniable. I do understand why it didn't win necessarily, because I think, we've talked about how it's a little bit slight in its, runtime, obviously. But yeah, happy it got all the recognition it did. I'm a little surprised that Bridget Fonda was nominated because,
Yeah.
she wasn't always an awards darling. And also, she doesn't have like the best necessarily kind of like in terms of the treatment of her character doesn't feel like it
Oh
would lend
yeah.
itself to a nomination per se, I guess.
No,
Like
no.
Robert Sean
They don't
Leonard didn't
love
get anything.
and they don't really love prickly women. And it's like
No.
she has all of like three scenes and she is the thorniest
Right.
daughter character.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, that's surprising
Yeah.
for many reasons.
Okay, so then just really quickly for In and Out, the movie came out September 19th, 1997, got generally positive reviews, especially for Joan Cusack's performance, and it was actually number one at the box office the weekend of its release, ahead of films like The Game, Wishmaster, LA Confidential, The Full Monty, A Thousand Acres, and G.I. Jane. So
Wow.
yeah, did really well overall. Decent sized hit. It was the number 23 movie of that year and got an Oscar nomination for Joan Cusack. And yeah, I'm happy that it did that well because it seems like a niche kind of comedy that
Yeah.
I don't think would probably do quite as well today.
No.
It'd probably be
No.
released straight to Hulu or something.
Straight to Hulu and then immediately taken off to then have to rent it for a bajillion dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I reminisce about those times when you could have, again, it's 90 minutes too. So it's like
Yeah.
quick,
In and
and
out, you
out,
could say.
in and out.
Wow. There you have it. Obviously, she wouldn't have gotten any awards attention for this because it's just a little cameo, but I think her scene contributed a little bit to its success, perhaps.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I'm just
Yeah.
being delusional fan, but yeah, it's a part of the equation.
Yeah, totally.
Yes. Let's get to our last segment where we're going to rate Glenn's performance on a very specific scale. First, thinking about her performance as Janet in The Gloaming. Would you say that she's ready for her close-up? One of her best performances? Is it low Glenergy? Not one of your faves? Or close but no cigar? Somewhere in the middle?
I think it's tough because we only have 90 or 60 minutes with her. So,
Right.
yeah. I am gonna still go with Close But No Cigar, even though I think that she's really great in
Yeah.
it. I just think because of the brevity of it, there were moments where I was like, I feel like she's cut a little bit short, even though I think it's like on its way to ready for her close up. Again, I think I just wanted a little bit more. So that's why I'm just gonna go with that for now.
That's
Who
fine.
knows?
Yeah.
Maybe it'll change.
No, I agree. It is, for me, a close but no cigar as well. It's a beautiful performance. Maybe I do prefer like the diva theatrics campiness that Glenn specializes in general, but this is one of her best performances in this mode of that down to earth, just sort of playing a, ordinary quote unquote character who doesn't have like those flamboyant qualities of her other great characters. It's just really lovely, grounded work. And the only reason it wouldn't be in Ready for a Close-Up is exactly what you said, is just the brevity of it. So, yeah, very good work from Glenn. What would you say for In and Out for that?
I mean,
It's hard to say because she's playing
as
herself.
a cameo,
Yeah.
I think it's like ready for her close up because I think she like delivers. It's a memorable cameo.
Yeah.
I think that's like the other thing too is like I can't tell you how many times I've watched a movie and like completely forgot that there's a cameo in it. You're not going to forget Glenn Close and In and Out. And again, she treats the comedy so well that it's like, yeah.
Yeah. I put it in close but no cigar personally, just because it's like she's playing herself.
Yeah.
It's not like the biggest stretch in the world. But, as far as cameos go, I might even prefer it to Hook, personally.
Yeah.
So
I would agree with that statement.
yeah. So really good work in 1997 from Glenn. She's really in that beautiful little sweet spot where she can do pretty much whatever she wants within reason, as a
Yes.
middle-aged actress in Hollywood can do within those confines. She is
Totally.
one of those like top hires at this point, and so I'm just thrilled that she is still in that mode for a while at least.
Yes.
Until we get to
Yes.
the 2000s where things get a little bit bumpier, but then she revives things again with Damages. So
Yes.
yeah. Morgan, this was such a joy. Thank you for joining me for both of these in movies.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me to talk about them.
Yeah. Hope you had fun.
Always.
And so, yes, where can people find more of you on the internet if
Yeah.
you wish for them to find you?
Yes. Find my podcast, Female Gaze, the Film Club, on Instagram and Blue Sky. We have new episodes every Sunday. You can stream it, I think, on all the big podcast platforms. The website, femalegazefilmclub.com, has reviews and other random thoughts. And you can also follow me on Letterboxd, MSML Roberts. So all the stuff is there.
Yes.
You can enjoy my usually one-line reviews of movies.
Which are always so sharp, and I love them so much. And
I try really hard.
Just to clarify for folks who may not know, it is Gaze, not Gays. Female
Yes.
gaze.
Yes.
Because we talked
Though,
a lot
I mean,
about some gay movies here. So,
yes.
don't get it twisted.
Don't get it twisted, but ally over here.
Yes.
We had Desert Hearts very early on in the
Very
podcast.
good.
So,
Yes. Exactly. Yes. Okay. Yes. Thank you all so much for listening. You can find me at Kevin_Jacobsen on Twitter and Instagram. Just Kevin Jacobsen, no underscore on Blue Sky. You can also listen to my Oscar-themed podcast, And the Runner-Up Is, for coverage of every single Best Actress race, including 1956 and 99 with Morgan here. Highly recommend the 1999 one in particular. That was such a
We had a
joy.
good time.
Yes. And that's And the Runner-Up Is on all platforms. And to keep up with the world according to Glenn on social, follow The Glenn Pod. And rate, review, and follow the world according to Glenn on all podcast platforms. And with that, I'll bid you all adieu.